Unknown. Unknown. Come on.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's time. Yeah, for the quest. That is the questionnaire. Man, and I am the unknown factor. You know, that means I am the Wade Wilson of hip hop. You know, that means I got my Zalian brother with me, Jay D-Day Hardaway. How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody else?
Man, you know, we reached episode 10.
Yes, we did. This is episode 10. Did you freeze?
Yeah, finally hit them double digits. Don't tell me I froze, Hardaway. No, I just stopped for a moment. I'm the unknown. Don't worry about what I do.
Oh, okay. Well, on my screen, you are frozen, sir. There you go. You shifted. What are you? He
I'm
is
really,
the
really
unknown.
sick of Killer Frost coming in here and messing with me. I don't know why she'd be freezing me up, man. But technically, with who we got, hell, it might be Iceman, because I think he was always way more on that tip. But in episode 10, it is our pleasure to welcome Stephen Grant. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How are you? Outside freezing up.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, man, it's just that unknown factor thing. Look, I am the Wade Wilson of hip hop. It's okay. I'll heal up. You know? Yeah. Got to get past it. Got to get through it. That is the way to do it, even if it is just a little touch of evil. Yeah, I can't help myself, you know? I love that was your favorite film, though. Excellent choice, by the way, man. And I love the film You Can't Stand, nor can I.
Which
What
one
a
can
terrible.
Oh, right, that one.
Titanic. Yeah.
Right.
I cannot stand that film.
There's a lot of films I can't see.
You know,
I had to pick one out.
We won't go through the list because the list, the point of the quest is not to get into what you can't stand, even though we do a little bit of that, man. It's to get into what made you work, what got you working, what kept you working, man. And I'll tell you, I usually throw my partner right under the bus and tell him to ask the first question, but I don't think that's the appropriate question in this particular interview. I feel like that's a question you've been asked I don't know how many times, right? Which is, how'd you get in the industry? I guarantee. Go on Wikipedia, you can read it. Go on Wikipedia, you can read plenty of things, right?
That's true.
But the thing I want to know, Stephen, is what kept you in the industry? You know what I mean? What, after you got in, kept your passion to where you were like, I gotta keep making comic books?
Debt?
Yes.
No, I don't. But you know, I mean, it was a way to make money.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best answer I think we'll probably ever get for that question. Stephen just said debt.
That was great.
That is phenomenal.
No, man, I was living in New York City. New York City was expensive.
Oh.
You had to, you know, pay your rent every month. You know, so I just kept going up and getting assignments because, you know, it doesn't matter what the book was. You know, you give me an assignment for two reasons. One, I had to pay my rent. Two, if you don't accept whatever they give you to write, then they don't now offer you anything else. So, you know, one thing led to another, and you know, it was I was in the business, so why would I turn around and walk out of it with nothing else to fall back on? So, you know, and I mean, I hate to sound completely practical about it, but there were practical reasons involved.
Yeah.
So, I'm the unknown factor. I don't function well with impracticality, I'll be honest. You do. But can I say, man, you're the first creator we've had the chance to come on that's done extensive work with the bigger two. And I mean, you've done a lot of work with Marvel. And you obviously were at Marvel at points where they did things a certain way. And I'm very curious. Back when I used to run NFGR and we did Super Nintendo, we had a couple of individuals that spoke on this. So I'm just curious of what's your opinion of the Marvel way, as opposed to, because I'm assuming you don't write your own work in the Marvel way. You know what I mean?
As far as I can.
Well, I mean, I would totally assume that you
I don't have any problem with it. It depends on the artist. Depends on what the artist I'm working with, how they want to work. I mean, a lot of times I don't know who I'm working with when I write the stories, so I write them full script. And that's why I started writing full script, because it just gave me more control. Because, and there's an old joke from when I started in the business that if you come up with when I started, the stories were 18 pages long. And if you come up with an 18-page plot that involves like 9 pages of fight scenes and 9 pages of character stuff, you'll end up with a story that's got about 15 to 16 pages of fight scenes, if you let the artist break it down themselves, unless they're a really experienced artist. So, you know, that was the gag. I mean, I don't think that ever actually happened, but and also you don't want dinosaurs to suddenly appear in the middle of it. And so, you know, when I had the chance, I started writing full script. But if I want to, you know, if the artist that I want to work with wants to write, wants me to do them the plot, I can easily do them the plot. I mean, when I worked with Paul Smith, I'd write him short stories, you know, just like a literal short story, and he'd adapt the short story. So, because that's how he wanted to work. So I'm fine working anyway. So I don't really have a problem with it. But the Marvel style definitely has drawbacks. So,
what would you say those are?
Little control over the shape of the story. I mean, that's the main drawback.
Do you feel like, just based on the fact that, I mean, it's the entirety of Marvel, do you feel like that's something that they have to do? Because,
no.
I mean, obviously...
I don't think Marvel does it anymore. I mean, most of the people I know write full scripts now. I'll tell you the real reason I started writing full scripts in the 90s is that editors were so trained in the Marvel style that they had no longer had any way to read them. They didn't know how to read them anymore. So this meant that if I gave them a plot, they'd read it like they were editing. If I gave them a full script, they'd read it like they were reading a story. So it fell in my favor that way. So, I mean, it was just a trick I pulled. And because editors wouldn't be so inclined to edit when they were reading a full script. Now that's changed because they're all used to being editors. They're all used to reading full scripts. So, but that was a trick I used to pull.
Nice.
What do you think caused that shift in the industry?
Just time constraints. See, when you're writing, excuse me a second, when you're writing plot, it works like this. You write a plot, you go in and you discuss the story with your editor, or you call them on the phone or whatever. And then you write a plot. The plot goes to the artist. The artist breaks down the plot into pencils. The pencils then come back to you, and you write the dialogue at that point on overlays. And then you mark out the dialogue, and then the overlays go to the. I forget whether it goes to the inker for inking first or whether it goes to the letterer for lettering. And then when that's done, it goes to the letterer, to whichever one didn't do the previous role to take care of. And then it goes to the colorist, and then it comes back to the editor, and then et cetera, et cetera. So that's like 18 steps in that method. If you write a full script, it goes to the penciler, the script goes to the penciler, the pencils go to the inker, it then goes back to the editor, for usually the assistant editor does the lettering placements, and then that goes to the
colorist.
Colorist, right. Sorry, I completely lost
You're all right, Stephen, you're all right.
It goes to the colorist.
I've read comics
for a color.
I've read comics a long time.
It cuts out like 2 or 3 stages along the way. So, and that's time you're cutting out. And when you've got a book that you've got to have out every 4 weeks, then, you want as many steps cut out as possible. And that was the biggest drawback to the Marvel method, is it just added too many steps to the process. So, and I think that's why they changed, because it just, made for fewer printer fines. So,
Matt, Can I say, Hardaway, I feel like I could take this whole interview and you won't get to say one single word. I want to point that out. So I'm going to let you ask a question because I got like 20 off what you just said, Steve, and it could go so many different routes and ways.
Oh, look, man, I was like enthralled. I was sitting there just listening, like, what? But no, I just got interesting. Little questions like, if you have you ever wrote a story about Banshee'S? Since they're your favorite mythical creature, have you ever wrote a story about Banshee'S?
About Banshee's, yeah, I did. I wrote a story in Challenge of the Unknown when I was writing it for DC in the mid-90s. So, which was actually a story that I had originally pitched for one of the Dracula books at Marvel, or I was going to pitch. I think they canceled it before I pitched it. And so I had it like sitting in the drawer, and I thought, yeah, I could change this into a Challenger story easily enough. And yeah, so yeah, I did write Banshee'S once, but I don't really have there's not that much opportunity for it. So I think they're a great, I think they're great monsters though, because they're weird for monsters, They're not monsters. They just predict things. They predict births and deaths, and so you can use them for all kinds of techniques. So.
Your opinion, like Paul Hardaway, so like he was aghast with it so much his camera went awry. That is phenomenal, Stephen. I love it. I love it. Because just as someone that had the opportunity to work in the industry so long and seen it evolve from very much just like a corner culture. You know what I mean? To it is what it is now. There are people that will say they're comic book fans that have never picked up a comic book.
True.
Just because of how prolific it's become. What's your opinion of watching that whole change, man? Because I remember in high school, I was reading a comic. You're a nerd. Now I'm walking around with a Deadpool shirt. It's like, oh, you like Deadpool? And I'm like, dude, you don't know anything about Wade Wilson. I love, yeah.
Well, you're still a nerd. But nerds are, but the thing about nerds is that ultimately nerds are the ones who rule the world. You don't in high school, but get to 30, 35, nerds are the people who run business. So, I don't have any problem with the way things have gone, particularly. I think it's great. I mean, it makes more money for me. So I hate to keep bringing it back to money, but that's always a factor. So I don't really, I don't have a problem with people only knowing She-Hulk through Disney, so it's fine. If that's what they like, that's what they like. It's fine with me.
Yeah, I understand completely.
Love. Well, I just got to say, Hardaway, you can take whatever you want. I just got to say, Stephen, I love that that's your takeaway from it, because I feel like, especially the deeper you get as far as people that have, there are certain people that have like a spite about that. Like, oh, you're not a real fan. Look, I agree. Like if somebody comes up to me, he's like, oh, you like Deadpool? So do I. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. But I know there's certain parts of the conversation that I would have with somebody like at a comic book store that I can't have with somebody out at the mall. But I do still appreciate the fact that they love Wade Wilson as a character. You know what I mean? So I love that as a creator, that's your takeaway from it, Steve. That is awesome to hear. Proceed, Hardaway. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
Yeah. Completely derailed me.
Why? Well,
I just like giving him a hard time. So I'm reading. It says you didn't really like any toys and whatnot. You were a reader. Yeah. Now, I would like to know, was it comics or novels, or both?
Both.
All right.
I started reading very young. Before I started reading comics, I mean, I remember the first real. I mean, I remember I had children's books and things. I don't remember what they were offhand. I mean, but my family was very. I'd actually get the first comic I can actually remember getting was a thick hard cover volume of Yogi Bear stories from a relative in England. They would put out apparently annuals of Hanna-Barbera stuff, and it was, and I didn't have, new Yogi Bear from cartoons, but that was it. But those were the first comics I remember reading, and I didn't really pay much attention to them. But But I was, reading all kinds of books and things like that. And my parents always had books around, and the first book that I can remember getting out of the library when I was like 6 or 7 was a thick book by Ivan Sanderson on abominable snowmen. And I read that I read the whole thing cover to cover about 6 times, and was, spent weeks after that, kind of like at night, like kind of like peering out my window when I was going to sleep, freaking out that there was something outside the window, that kind of thing. So and
what
then
what was your favorite novel growing up?
oh boy, I don't know if I had a favorite. The first one I can remember reading was Pebble in the Sky by Isaac Asimov. But I mean, I read all kinds of things. I mean, I was reading I read John Fowles's The Magus when I was like 11. So I mean, I was just reading. I don't really think I was focusing on what my favorites were. On favorites, I was just reading whatever came to mind. There were weird things. I mean, there was like a spy novel by a guy named Jack Hunter who wrote. There was a movie called The Blue Max, which was World War I, biplane pilot thing, dogfighter story. And I didn't know this. I didn't know that he wrote, but he also wrote this novel that I bought on a whim, paperback novel that I bought on a whim, called One of Us Works for Them, which was a huge influence on my later development as a writer. In which the protagonist, you find out that the protagonist, he works for the CIA, but is actually spying on them for somebody else. And the implication through the whole thing is that he's working for the Chinese somehow. But at the end, you find out that he's actually working for another American spy agency, spying on the I think, Defense Intelligence Agency or something, spying on the CIA. And that kind of blew my mind when I read it. And I went back and read that. I think I was like, 10 or 11 when I read that. And I went back and got it out of the library a few years ago. I ran across it at the local library, and I thought, I got to read this. And it's like the worst written piece of shit you ever read in your life. It's horrible. It's just horrible. But, I mean, completely unreadable. But I soaked that up like a sponge. So I mean, I read whatever came in front of me, pretty much.
Can I say, though, on the note of that, you intrigued me very much with one of your answers, man, which is your favorite comic book now. Because you're the first of everyone that's done something that I would probably do, which is be like anything written by, you know what I mean, as opposed to actually giving a character.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, what is it that makes it to where it's not a specific character you want to follow, it's a specific writer you want to follow?
Well, I mean, I don't really worry. Oh, that's right. I wrote Howard Chaykin. Right. I was thinking I wrote me.
Howard Chaykin.
That's the answer.
No, well,
I give.
You did put your own work and then anything by Howard Chaykin. Which, check out Stephen Grant. There'll be all kinds of links in the description.
I mean, I've never really been all that interested in particular characters. I mean, when I was a kid, of course, I loved Spider-Man and Green Lantern and all that. But after a certain point, I became much more interested in the stories and the characters. I mean, the characters are just vehicles for stories as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I realize people don't like to think about it that way. But, all you're doing with you're taking any character and putting them in a situation and working out the situation you want them to, and of course you get into all the things like character, and I'm not against any of that. I'm not talking about plot driven stories or anything like that. I'm talking about the overall stories. I want to read these stories, and Howard's stuff is always very interesting to read. You can take the most entertaining character in the world and put him in a shit story and you won't. I can swear on this, right?
You know what? I come to the conclusion during editing one of the episodes that you can, because my co-host has a mouth during the interview that's worse than mine, which I find funny. Because Steven, look, if you fucking talk to me, look, I'm gonna throw out a swear word too there. If you talk to me and it wasn't on the podcast, you'd be like, this dude in the Navy or something? Because Jesus,
maybe he grew up in my neighborhood.
It's not my fault.
It is your fault, Hardaway.
I consider it human language, and I
Okay, everybody
consider
just
it
froze
weird.
up on me.
You go ahead though, Steven. Yeah, go ahead. I don't even care anymore. I
Everybody
don't
just
like.
locked up.
Oh, what happened? Oh, you froze.
Oh, there we
Okay,
go.
there you go.
There
There
we
you go. All right. Look, man. It's
It was like
because
being
you
at
start
the end of an
swearing.
episode of, Naked
It's
Gun.
because you were swearing too much, man. You were swearing
Oh
too
my
much.
God,
Uh,
I love that series. The Naked Gun series was one of the funniest movies.
it was great.
It was well done. Well done. Well done.
Well,
I
let's flip
like
to
that kind of
something.
humor, like that and Mr. Bean. I like Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of
Let's.
humor in what.
Okay, well, I was just saying, I want to flip to something that you're not such a fan of, Steven, because I was very interested in your two answers for least favorite character, and I want to ask, man,
Okay.
with the Fantastic Four and Superman, are there any story arcs that written by writers that you go, that's genius, just the way it was done, or however, like you really enjoy the stories, or is it just you find those characters? It's just not. I mean, just not relatable, or just
I just kind
not
of find
something
them.
desirable to read.
I just kind of generally have always found them dull. Well, I liked Superman when I was 10, and then, I mean, I had a subscription to Action Comics when I was 10, and then when that was up, I just wasn't interested anymore. I mean, it's just, I think I had too many Mort Weisinger stories with Superman, and I mean, the problem I always had with Superman is what are you going to do with him, really? I mean, you can't. You have to keep coming up with ways to make him weak, and what's the point of that? Either that, or you've got to throw him against someone who's stronger than he is, and what's the point of that? Because he's supposed to be the strongest guy there is. So if you keep coming up with people who are stronger than him, that kind of undercuts the whole gimmick. So, and Fantastic Four, I just always thought were dull. I mean, the Thing and the Torch are okay. Reed and Sue are like dishwater to me. It's like, and I just never thought they were very interesting people. So,
All right,
I think that's hilarious. I
but
think that's hilarious just because of who your favorite
yeah,
character
why do you
is
like
as far as Spider-Man. Because that's where he was introduced. Sorry, that's all I was saying. So
yeah. Well, here's my thing though.
yeah.
My favorite character is the Question. So why do you like the Question?
Because he's so perfect as what he is. He's like, I mean, everybody wants to have like moral clarity, right? This is what everybody really wants. We don't get it. After a while, if you're smart, you get the idea that it's a stupid concept, but everybody wants it anyway. And here's a guy who was just so much exactly what he was. He was, I mean, he basically told people to piss off all the time. It's like it was just such I mean, it's hard to put in words, but he was just such a great character. But I mean, I like the Ditko version. I don't know, maybe you like the Denny O'Neil version, which I never liked because it was too wobbly for me.
When I started reading the Question and playing with the Question, I wasn't really into the writers or the artists. I was worried more along, was the story good? Was I enthralled?
Right.
And it was the character well flushed out. And the reason why I like the Question is because he was flushed out. It was never a question of like, is he going to change and his answers are going to be different, his speech patterns and everything.
Right.
It was no. He is like, look, you're useless to me. I need to do this. I got this to do. It's not the conspiracies. It's the conspiracy. This company. I got to take this one down. I got to take this guy down. He's causing problems. So this guy, Batman came up, and this is one of my favorite reasons why the Question is awesome. Batman asked him for help. That's why I like the Blue Beetle. When it came to detective work, the guy who was considered the #1 detective ever, when he needed help, he had two people, Blue Beetle and the Question. That was it. And that's when I realized the Question was the most ultimate street level, but yet global hero, but not a hero.
I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
Now that's why I was like, the question's awesome, and he no face. You could no
Well, that
face.
was great. I mean, he was a terrific visual. I always loved the visual. I mean, he was just a ordinary guy, except you turn around and he doesn't have a face.
So let me
Yeah.
ask this, man. When you're bringing a character to life initially, you know what I mean? I mean, in the case of like creating a character,
Right.
what do you think is the most important aspect? Like, do you think that the look is more important than the backstory of that character, or do you think the backstory is more important than the look? Though in saying that, I know they're both intricate or integral. I want to point out. I'm just curious if you have an opinion as far as which one will propel a character quicker.
I think neither of those. I think the thing, when you're creating a character, I think the thing that's most important is that they fascinate you. Because if you don't want to read about the character, nobody else is going to want to read about the character. And so, and everything else, and you know, then you get into the other things. I mean, the look is in comics, of course, comics are visual, so the look becomes very important. And you know, and then if you can't flesh out the character, you're not going to have stories for very long. Which, in certain cases, I mean, when I did the first Punisher story, I wasn't all that interested in the Punisher, but I wanted to tell that particular story, and he worked great in it. So that's why I wanted to use him. So whether or not the Punisher could sustain a series for, you know, 15, 20 years was not my issue at the time. It was whether he could sustain those 4 or 5 issues. And, you know, so it depends what your goal is when you're doing it. But if you're trying to come up with a character that you want longevity, then, you know, basically it's a crapshoot. What can I say? You know, you never know. You never know. You do what you do and hope for the best, really.
Fair enough. Fair
I mean,
enough.
I wish I had better advice, but that's it. You know, you never know.
No, I think you're sincerely right in that, Stephen, because I think there are times where characters have been created and their backstory was the thing, or just how they were as a character was more what drove them. And then I think, pardon me, I think there are other instances where it was more just, oh, that dude looks cool and he's a badass, and that's what really made the character popular.
Sure.
You know, so I do agree, man. It is a bit of a crapshoot. I honestly just wanted your opinion, but you just brought up Punisher story arc, and man, they didn't do that. They didn't do any of that storyline in the TV series, did they?
Bits and pieces of it.
Okay, I thought, because I was trying to remember. It's been a while since I watched the Netflix series. I know none of the 3 films that they did covered any of that story, and I feel like it's
actually,
not something.
the one with Tom Jane did to a tiny little extent. I mean, some of the stuff was involved in it, but it was spread. I'll tell you, they stole lines from it.
How does that feel? How does that feel, man, to see that turned into that?
I'll tell you, it's weird to be like watching something and suddenly realize that you're listening to your own lines spoken back to you. That's a pretty weird experience. It's like, you know, I know that line from somewhere. It's like, oh wait, that's where I know it from. I wrote it. And but you know, it's fair game. I don't, you know, I mean, I don't hold it against them or anything. But you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting. It's kind of an outer body experience. So.
Nice.
I could believe that.
Yeah.
To be sitting watching that film in theaters, and suddenly it's like, hey, I wrote those words like 20-some years ago. This is really odd. Yeah. I'm curious, man. Out of everything you've done, is there something you would like to see adapted that hasn't been?
Everything. I want the money, man. Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was one that stuck out.
Well, there's stuff going on that you don't know about, so that cuts out some of it. My dog just came in. He's going to pester me for a snack for a second, but
It's
anyway,
okay. We love
you know,
animals.
so
QUESTionaire.
there are things. Hi, there are things that. Excuse me, one
Oh
second.
yeah, that's fine.
Hey,
Hey,
hey, look,
buddy.
let's put a quick pause. Steven's dog needs a treat, right? And we at the QUESTionaire love animals. So we'll take a brief moment to get the dog a treat. That's what's up. I mean, I had to check on my dog on one point on a different episode. So that's all a different note. If y'all don't like animals, I don't know why. I won't be mean, but like don't be a Dennis Reynolds and be like, I don't like dogs. That's all I'm saying.
This is one of my aphorisms. There is no world that can be so bad that has dogs in it. No world can be so bad that has dogs in it. So
I like that.
dogs
I
are great.
like that.
I like that as
like
well. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
All
no,
right.
hold on, because he didn't finish answering the other one,
Okay.
man. As far
Oh
as,
yeah.
As
Lost
far as
track.
something you would like adapted, but keep that on deck, Hardaway.
I lost track. What was the question?
Oh, something that piece of your work that you would love to see adapted.
Well, I've got two series that are supposedly going. Two old series that I did for Avatar that are supposedly going to series. I'd love to see Challenge of the Unknown be adapted. I always really like that. My own stuff. What have I done? I can't remember. Well, Two Guns was made into a movie, so you know. There's a series I did for Boom after that called Deceivers, which may be made into something. They're talking about making the series I did with Mike Zeck called Damned for Wildstorm that Boom later reprinted. They're negotiating a movie for that right now. So now I don't have a lot of things left that I mean, I created a book called Whisper, but I don't really want anyone touching that but me. And I created a book called Badlands, which people periodically threaten to turn into a series. The thing yeah, what?
You said threaten?
Threaten, yeah, threaten.
I love the way you phrase that. It's like they're threatening to take my work and turn it into a TV or movie.
To turn it in, well, because I know things will be changed, and those two things I'm fairly proprietary about. But there's various other things. There's a book Pete Woods and I did for Legendary a few years ago called Cops or Criminals, which would make a good movie. Or a good TV series for that, streaming series. Everything should be a streaming series. I mean, I'd actually like them to turn, I wouldn't mind seeing them turn Two Guns into a streaming series. I think it'd make a great streaming series. So, but, whether they're going to do that, I don't have any power over any of these things because I'm not the guy with the money. So, yeah. So
you gotta bug the guy with the money. I got you.
It's up to them. I mean, the guy with the money is the guy who figures out what gets made. So,
I won't ask the 3 questions that you brought into my head because Hardaway said he had one.
Sure.
I mean, if you got subsequent,
yeah, man. Because look, I'm curious with streaming services and everything happening, and it becoming something that's just everybody uses streaming services anymore. Right. That's how it is. What effect do you think that had as far as making it to where the medium of comic books started getting transferred and turned into television shows? Like, do you think? I mean, because obviously it was positive.
Oh well, I mean that had a lot to do with it, but it started before streaming really kicked in. But but the thing is, streaming services eat up a lot of product. Everyone wants franchises, and comics are full of franchises. So that's where you can go there and you can go, hey, I'll pick. I need a werewolf story. Is there any? Oh, there's dozens of werewolf stories. Oh, good. I can pick one of these. Which one can we get cheap? And and then it's then they go on from there. So but that's comics are a perfect place for that. I mean, look how many #1 issues come out a month now from all the independents and stuff, and no one really, everyone thinks DC and Marvel are locked up, so no one even looks at those anymore. So Hollywood doesn't even look at those anymore because Disney's got Marvel and Warner's has DC, and so where are you going to go? You look at Image Books, you look at Dark Horse Books, you look at Boom, you look at whoever, the dozens and dozens of comics.
I never realized until you just said those words, Stephen, but you're right as far as because when Disney bought Marvel, it did very much change the game for the rest of the companies because they suddenly, because I mean, you hadn't been able to touch DC in a while. That's been Warner Brothers. That's their stuff. They're not going to go out there.
Except it was actually fairly easy to go, to get around Warner Brothers. I mean, you could go to Warner, you could negotiate with Warner Brothers for stuff because if they didn't want to do it, they didn't want to do it.
But I think once they seen what Marvel's done with the MCU, they're like, give us all our properties. Yeah. So the MCU ostensibly, in a way, helped independent comic books get to another medium.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's a question of that.
I don't think I ever would have come to that conclusion without this interview, Stephen. Just so you know, that's very intriguing to
there
think.
wouldn't be an impending DC universe if Marvel hadn't done it. Because I mean, I don't think Warner's would have, collectivized the stuff. So.
I agree on that.
I think they would have just gone on making this little movie here and this movie there, and making trying to do another Batman trilogy, and making everybody sick of Batman, and I only say that because I'm sick to death of Batman. But
not to come back to episode 2, but Ariel Mandel pitched the greatest Batman story that will never ever happen. I wish. Remind me at the end of the interview, and I'll tell you what it was, Steve, because I'm telling you, it was genius. But if you want to listen to that, go check out episode 3 of the Questionnaire. I forgot. This is all a tribute to episode 1, but that's besides the point, right? Hardaway, ask your question.
All right, cool.
You forgot it now, didn't you?
No. There's no way I'll forget this one. All right. So I see that you like barbecue. Now, do you like Korean barbecue, Southern barbecue, Midwest barbecue, mountain barbecue, like Thai barbecue, African barbecue? Like what kind of what?
I'm not that picky.
Oh.
I don't like sauces particularly. I prefer dry rub to sauces. I prefer beef to pork, but I have no problem about pork. I generally don't like ribs particularly, just because of the consistency of ribs. Because I'm not big on fat. I don't like the taste of fat. But like brisket, I love. Korean barbecue, I like that fine. I don't know that I've ever had Thai barbecue, but it's I like give me barbecue. I'm not that picky.
So wood, coal, and fire.
That's all that matters.
It's all barbecue, right?
Yeah, it's all barbecue. All right, that's a great answer. Now I want barbecue.
Can you're gonna have to wait till after the show, Hardaway. Can I say back to the fact that you feel like it's more the stories that drove the story? I love the fact that you answered like you really don't have a favorite actor or actress. It's more the directors. And I understand that, man. I love, honestly, one of the directors you listed being Guy Ritchie. That is one of my favorite directors. I think every film of his, except one. There's one film of his I honestly wasn't that big of a fan
Swept
of.
Away?
I'm not going to, So we'll say it's his film that's not so good, in other words, because obviously Steven.
The Madonna film, we can be open about it.
Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah, that's why he went and did The Gentleman. Because that film.
The Rock and Roll is my favorite Guy Ritchie film. But
that's a good one. I think that's honestly a less known one.
Pardon?
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the less known out of all.
No, it is one of the less known, but it's a fantastic film. Everything in it is just great. The Gentleman is really good. I like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm not crazy about the Sherlock Holmes films, but I'm not crazy about Sherlock Holmes to start with. So
All right. See, he actually has created two of my favorite films, Snatch and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, true. Lock,
whew.
Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is fantastic.
Yeah, that is one of the best. What do you think Guy Ritchie would do with a Punisher movie?
Oh, he'd kill with a Punisher movie. I'd
Wait,
love,
can I?
but it'd be a lot more tongue in cheek than your average Punisher movie. I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure.
So here's my next question because this brings up a good this
Yeah.
follow. Would you let Guy Ritchie touch Whisper?
If we came to an understanding, yes.
Ah,
You heard
Steven,
that,
they're
Guy
like, listen,
Ritchie?
guy,
You heard
listen,
that, guy?
If we would have to come to an understanding about certain things I do and do not want done with the character. And is he agreed to all that? Sure, I would love to see Guy Ritchie direct. I'd love to see Guy Ritchie direct anything of mine. So,
Which was gonna
can
be
I
the
say
next?
to you?
Oh, well, you go. He already
Go
answered
ahead,
the question.
Hardaway. No,
He
go ahead,
already answered
Hardaway.
that question.
All right. Well, I'm very curious, then, man. You make me think of a. Oh God, is that name gonna escape me? That's gonna annoy the crap out of me. No, it's not Alan Moore. It's not. Oh shit. Fuck. I will not embarrass myself and ask that question. I
what did
swear
they
to Christ. I'm not embarrassing myself and asking that. Grant Morrison. Wait, no, fucking god damn it. I am cursing up a storm over here, Steven. So yeah, apparently you can curse. Hardaway, ask a question real quick while I Google something.
Oh my goodness! All right. If you can
This is one
have,
of these I've done.
if you can play with an independent character from any of these any one that you haven't done, which one would you like to toy around with, and what would you do?
Wow, I haven't got the slightest idea. I can't even. God, I can't even think of any indie characters off the top of my head. I mean, I read them, but they generally, God, honestly, I can't think of any. I just want to do my own stuff,
Right, right.
And
I
these days, I
understand.
just want to do my own stuff. I mean, if someone came to me and asked me to write something, I'd think about it, but I'd have to, work out what I wanted to do then. But nothing leaps to mind in terms of some character that I've always wanted to get my claws into because, I'm kind of past that point in my career now. Yeah.
All right, all right,
Okay,
all right.
I was not going to make an ass out of myself and say the name that came to my mind and be wrong.
Okay.
But I am glad to know that the name was right. That name being Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like, I could not say that and be wrong because I'm like, that's so wrong on so many levels of me from the nerd that I am not to know that. But I'm juggling a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen, and we got a lot of dope things that you could check out before Steven, a lot of dope things coming up after. And, we got Stephen Grant in the room. My brain wasn't quite, like, it's just a lot, whatever. And I am the unknown factor. It makes me feel like with those two comics, though, you kind of feel like what he did. I'm curious, are you glad that you don't have the issue that Alan did as far as,
I'm sorry, your question.
You keep cutting out, bro.
Your question.
Don't say that, Hardaway. It's because the question doesn't want to be asked, man. I'm telling you. Am I clear?
Yes, you're clear.
All right. It's because Alan probably don't even want me to ask the question. He's like, don't ask that shit, dude. Alan Moore just stepped in and messed with this interview. I got no doubt in my mind. Because I'm curious, are you happy, unlike the situation he's in, you have control of the Whisper? You know what I mean? There's not somebody that could go over your head and say, hey, we're doing this. Where in the case of The Watchmen, there's a reason his name's not on that film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not happy about his situation. I'm glad I'm.
Well, no. Yeah,
Sure.
no, that's why. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's happy about that situation.
Alan was kind of trapped by circumstances because No one really, I mean, Alan's view is kind of that DC cheated him on that. And that's not really, I don't think that's really an accurate view, but I can understand how he feels that way because I think they made, well, I mean, they made a deal that he signed off on. And, but the thing about doing contracts is you always have to make sure everyone's on the same page. I mean, I had a lawyer once who said he didn't really think he among all of his clients, he didn't really think I needed a lawyer to go through my contracts because I would read the contracts and I'd call him up and I'd say, what does this clause mean? And he'd say, oh, well, that means this and this and this and this and this. And I'd say, well, tell them to write it that way. and and I'd keep finding things that he wouldn't pick up on because he was trained in legalese and I wasn't. So things that made perfect sense to him legally, I would go, that can be interpreted this way and that way, and et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, when Alan and Dave signed their deal, there was no such thing as, really no such thing as graphic novel, as trade paperback collections. There was no such thing as second and third editions. These things didn't happen. Watchmen basically created them. And so he got, unfortunately, stuck in a situation that he had legally signed off on without realizing that's what he had legally signed off on. So Warner's technically isn't doing anything wrong legally. I think they should probably have figured out some sort of accommodation. And I mean, I can understand his point of view on it, though. So, so I'm not condemning Alan for his point of view or anything like that. But from a completely objective observer here, I think it's just an unfortunate situation all the way around. Alan has Alan created other characters he's held on to? I don't really remember. I mean, he's done. I know he's done a lot of books, but I don't remember.
Yeah, man. I mean, Alan's. Yeah, I know Alan Moore has created. I mean, has worked on. Look, if you've read comics and you've not read Alan Moore's work, you what? Read 2 comics? I mean that's just true. I mean, he's done so much.
I mean, I love Alan's work, but I can't think of any characters. Well, I mean, Bo Jeffries saga and things like that, but I don't know if he owns them or not. I think he probably does because that was for Warrior, I think. But actually, I think that was for British Underground Comics. So.
Well, I know he made V, and
he did.
That was obviously DC. So,
right.
Got me trying to look and see because I know, like I said, I know that's an individual that, like Alan Moore, has worked prolifically, just as you have, and has worked for both the big companies as well as in numerous companies beyond those. I'm not, but he's worked with the big 2, and then, I mean, 2000 AD, he's worked. I'm not going to sit here and read through his whole Wikipedia.
His image stuff, and Avatar, lots of stuff, and yeah.
And I mean, if he's worked for Image and created any characters, I know they're creator owned, so you're allowed to keep your character. I'm not honestly positive.
Well, there were the 1963 characters, but I don't know what ever became of them. I mean, it's an irrelevant question. It's really got nothing to do with anything. I was just, musing.
So hey, we mused a lot over here at the Questionnaire, bro.
I think Alan, and I'm hope I'm not talking out of school or putting words into his mouth, but just from going by the material that I've read by him since he did Watchmen, I think he's got largely a similar worldview to me, which is that he's more interested in the stories than specifically the characters or the idea of franchises or something like that, So.
I think reading what I have of Moore's work, which is quite a bit, probably more than I'm honestly aware of, because when I've read comics since I can remember, and it wasn't until later on in life that I started to really note the creators.
Right.
I mean, I was probably in my mid-20s when I started to be like, oh, that was written by this guy who I know read this, who I know, but so I'm absolutely positive. I've read more of more of Alan Moore's work, and honestly more of yours, Stephen, than I'm rightly aware of, just because of how I read comic
Oh, well,
books.
everybody's read mine and doesn't know it. So
Yeah.
I run into that all the time at conventions. It's like, man, I saw you were coming to this convention, so I was looking for books to sign in. You wrote this? I didn't know you wrote this. You wrote this? And it's like, yeah, I wrote all that stuff. It's like, it's part of the game. It's fun. It's amusing.
How funny is that to realize, though? And this is I'm gonna wrap this up to like 2, maybe 3 questions, because I know you've probably seen the fact that you used to see more younger people at conventions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to them now. And this is from previous interviews from previous artists and creators. This is why I state this. I've been told that you don't so much see a younger crowd nowadays. It's more you see.
I don't know.
I
don't notice that. I see maybe I'm just not paying attention, but it's always been an older fan crowd in general. But I still see a lot of younger people. I still have people coming up, the new publications of things, reprintings of things people come up with. So,
I like to hear that. I
have not really noticed much shift in that regard. But like I say, maybe I'm just not paying attention. So
I hope you're right, Stephen. I really, really do, because I've heard very much the opposite from Hardaway, 3, 4, 5, 6 different people at this point.
Well, but on the other hand, these days a lot of the younger people are not reading. I'm not reading Marvel and DC. They're reading manga. I mean, my daughter grew up reading manga. So they're reading what they want to read. I mean, the fact that they're not reading things that we used to read, that's not necessarily a minus. That's just the change in the wind. That's all. And this is something I find is that when people complain online basically about, comics are dying, it's like you're not looking at the bigger picture. I mean, like you keep seeing now DC is dying. DC is dying. When Warner's is in trouble, DC is dying. And if you look at DC sales, they're making money hand over fist, but they're making money on what they're making money on is the teen adventure novels. All these weird things that DC fans don't even pay attention to, and all these books Jim Chadwick is editing that are basically for the scholastic market. That's the stuff they're making tons of money off of these days. Not that a lot of their other books aren't selling very well, but that's their big cash cow now, and that's just something the comics fans are going to have to get used to. But people who go, man, people aren't young people aren't reading comics. Yeah, they are. They're just not reading the ones you want them to read.
See, and look, I just want to point out, I love that answer, Stephen. I don't care what comics they read. I just like to know that the young are reading. You know what I mean?
As far as I know, comics are doing very well with the younger crowd, which I love saying that. It's like Ed Sullivan, and now we have an act for the young people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm going to say, man, I half want to ask the next question based on the fact that we're talking about younger people, but I feel like based on the fact that, I prefer my comics like this because I'm OG, and my partner better take the next question. I said like this, bro, just in case you didn't catch that.
Yeah. I personally like webtoons and digital comics because there's no space taking over,
Yeah.
He wants to ask, and I want to know, what do you think of that and how it's impacted the industry itself?
Digital comics and webtoons?
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. I love it. I love digital comics. I mean, I do all my reading on a tablet now. All my comics reading on a tablet now.
Yes.
Because one, the colors really pop.
Thank you.
Two, I don't need a closet. I mean, my closets are full of comics. I don't need any more comics. I don't need any more paper in my house. You know, it's like I
Thank
can fit
you.
hundreds of comics on a two. I get a 256K chip about this big. You can fit hundreds and hundreds of comics on it, and they look great. You can read them. If you're having trouble reading the dialogue, you can just widen it out and be able to read it with no problem. It's fantastic. I love the medium. I think it's the future. I definitely think it's the future of comics. And the only reason I think it's not the future of comics right now, that it isn't the present of comics right now, is that there would be an awful lot of really, really pissed off retailers if there were. And we know this because when people have brought it up, you've ended up with a lot of really, really pissed off retailers. So, you know, I can understand where it's a threat to their business, but they should figure out a way to deal with it. I mean, they should figure out a way to make themselves distribution points for digital comics. I mean, I think they should have done that years ago.
Can I just say, man, you just gave me a great idea for any comic book retailer out there. And if anybody, any comic book retailer that's like a real physical store wants to take this, I don't care, because I'm about making comic books more prolific. I love them. I have since I was a kid.
Well, hold off on it and let's save it. Let's hold off on it and let's save it, refine it, and see what we can do with it before you just tell the world.
Bro, because I ain't got time to do all of what I'm
then
about
I'll
to
do
explain.
it.
It's very simple. I'll tell Rob next time I'm at Comic Book University. That's my local comic book store I love. Like, if you just take, because regardless of what you do, there's still going to be the figures, the pops, all the collectibles that go along. And people are still going to want that, right? So in my opinion, all you need to do is make it to where, like, look, we have this physical comic, but if you bring this up and say you want it digitally, I'm going to scan this QR code and I'm going to give you this and you can go get it and blah, 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 and we're good. I feel like that should be an easy transition.
Well, I'll give you a free idea here that I'm never going to do, so I don't care. And
that's what I'm saying. I ain't opening a comic book store. That's why I'm giving the idea out for free.
People have been making, the past 2 years, all you've heard about is NFTs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the big deal about NFTs. You want to know where the real money in NFTs are? It's figuring out a way to micro NFT so that you can put out a comic and sell it to anybody on an NFT, and they're the only ones who can read it. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
You do this with magazines, you do it with comics. Suddenly you're not selling one NFT for $1 million. You're selling, you don't have to get somebody to pay $1 million for an NFT. You get 1 million people to pay $1 for an NFT.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the real money is. So, and if someone comes up with that, publishers are going to line up to pay for it, because that's what they're all dying to pay. Because then suddenly you've got the distribution system that protects them.
Now, what's funny about that actually is that a musical artist did that with his latest album. He sold it for very cheap. And a record label ended up buying a few 100,000 copies of it at like $10 a pop. So, and that wasn't even all of the copies. They just ended up buying more than half of the copies that he made as NFTs.
Well, I hadn't heard about that, but it's logical. It's the logical thing to do. And why no one has come up with, I mean, maybe it's just now the big problem with NFTs is that they're a biological, not a biological hazard, they're an ecological hazard. Environmental hazard, right.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out a way around that, then, it's a close to perfect system that they've been dying for, because this is what, rights management nonsense has been trying to do for years, and just is a terrible way to handle it. So, I mean, someone's going to do it sooner or later, and whoever does it's going to end up making a lot of money off of it. So, but that's what comics really need. By the way, webtoons, I think webtoons are, I don't look at them that much, but I think webtoons are just great from what I've seen of them. And, if they get people reading comics, I'm all for them. That's it. It's like,
that's what I say. Like, I mean, this is the this is probably the lifelong comic book reader in me. But like I said, I prefer that physical, you know, I've got it in my hand and I can feel. There's just something that's always been different about that. To me, I'll be real honest, Steve, and I'm very surprised to hear you like, I read everything on a tablet, because I've done that a little bit for certain things, but it kind of drives me crazy not to have the physical, and I can't explain to you why. Just I'm nuts, and
See,
we'll leave it at
but
that.
the artifacts don't matter. I used to drive this one woman that I knew in college nuts because I would buy. She was a big comics fan, and I would get like, DC mystery comics that had like, a Bill Drott story and an Alex Tillis story and whatever, and like 5 different people in them. And I'd get them and I'd tear out the pages that I wanted to keep and throw away the rest of the comic. And she'd be, "You're destroying comics." And it's like, I don't care. I just want the stories. It's like, I mean, I've never really had that much interest in them as artifacts. I've never been a huge collector. I mean, the series that I really like, I've collected, but in terms of just collecting, it just, who's got the time or space? I moved
That's the funny.
too much.
Well, and I know for a fact, man, yeah, you got 6 to 12 or something long boxes like that, and you got to move around a couple times. I know from personal experience, it's not a lot of fun. That's why I probably don't have a long box worth anymore, but that's neither here nor there. But I get you as far as artifacts, man, but that's not, like, for me personally, I know that's not what it is. Like, it's something about having it physically and being able to turn the page.
You know what I mean? Gets me. It gets me because people keep saying this, and I just have never gotten it at all. Is that they say, "I just love the smell of the old paper," and I'm going, "What the hell are you talking about?"
That one I agree, Stephen. I don't get. Hardaway obviously doesn't either.
No, not one bit. Look, I don't understand the idea behind, "Oh, I miss the feel of the paper. I miss the feel, the colors on the paper. All that. None of it makes any sense to me because a lot of them are the same people that scream about the environment, how they want to protect the environment. And I'm like, well, check this out. Real talk. You're taking our breath away. Every time you take down a tree, you're taking our breath.
Yeah.
When you can use the tablet that is already made or your phone that is already made. And I mean, look, there's so many that are made. If they stop for 10 years making them, everybody could still comp a new one. So there's plenty of phones and tablets already and computers already made where you can read at your leisure without having any of the clutter, any of the potential fire hazard, which is that's a health hazard right there for
Well,
you.
that depends on the tablet, but
But I'm just not I own comics. I have over 400 of them. It's a lot. Big ass boxes sitting in the corner that I read them things. Or some of them I read quite a few times. But but most of them was only 1 or 2 times, and now they're just sitting there collecting. And I'm like, oh, what am I thinking about? What's the real reason why you're sitting there collecting them? Oh, I'm gonna sell them. I'm gonna give them to my kids because it's an investment. They'll sell them and they'll make money and so on and so. That's a lie. You're lying to yourself.
Let me ask you,
yeah.
based on what Hardaway just said.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead if you got something to say.
I was going to
Steve.
say, how much is the death of Superman worth today? So,
that's what I'm getting ready to say too.
Yeah.
Is, I mean, if you look at like the classic books, the older stuff, to where when people didn't think about collecting, the first appearance of Spider-Man, Action Mysteries #1, things like this, where they were just throwaway. Obviously, those things are worth money now because there's so few of them. Right. Why do you think it is that people don't get the fact that, if you keep like books from the 90s, most of them ain't worth dick, right? That's just pretty flat out true. There's not a lot of books from the 90s era. I don't care what you're talking about, unless you get real specific and pinpoint things. They're worth more than most of them aren't even worth the damn cover price. You know what I mean? At this point.
Right.
What do you think's made it to where people got so ecstatic about collecting, but don't realize that the fact that everybody's ecstatic about collecting is what makes them to where none of these will be worth anything in the future?
Well, I mean, the idea that you can have a book out there that's got 5 million copies in print, that's going to eventually be worth something. It's maybe when we get to the point of where there's, several trillion people on the planet, but
Oh God,
you
I'm
know,
not looking forward to that.
but
But go
it's
ahead.
well, I don't think that would ever happen. But
Huh.
but it's it's just because everybody wants to get rich quick. That's why. And everyone wants to believe they can get rich quick, and it's they don't want to really think it through to the point where they're telling themselves, no, this isn't going to work for me. They're going, yeah, this has got to work for me because this is my big, and I think it's actually a big curse in our current society is that everyone wants to get rich quick. So I mean, I want to get rich quick, but I realize there's not a easy way to do it. So, and, so I mean, I wouldn't mind being rich, but I can make do without it. But and I think that's why that they just don't want to admit that it's just not going to work. I mean, and once in a while you do end up with that one rare book that nobody else has. But well, I'll tell you, this is a story from a comic shop back in the late '80s when the Batman books were coming out, and suddenly everyone was doing multiple covers and things. And I was in a comic shop, and I was living in Westwood, California at the time, Westwood neighborhood in Los Angeles, and there was a comic shop.
You just like to stay in the real expensive areas, huh, Stephen?
Yeah, sure.
But go ahead. I mean, from New York to Cali, like
it wasn't that expensive at the time. I mean, it was, and my wife was taking a course at UCLA, so it was convenient for her. So.
Okay. But go ahead. Sorry, I had to throw that out there.
But I was in a comic shop and up there called Graffiti, and there was a guy who wanted to know, who was asking the guy at the counter, well, there's these two covers here, and which one should I buy? Because he was only going to buy one. Which one should I buy? He said, well, he's a professional. Go ask him. And I'm going like, thanks a lot. And he comes over and he says, I got these two covers here, and which one should I buy? I said, well, which one do you like the best? He looks at it. He says, well, I like this one. I said, well, buy the other one because everyone else is going to like that one best too, and so that one's going to be the rare one. So, and it's like it blows his mind. It's like he's not, people don't think about things like that. It's like the cover that's the hottest cover, unless they're purposely, what they do now is they make them purposely rare covers. I mean, Nick Barucci has made Dynamite Comics. The entire economy of Dynamite Comics is based on rare covers. So, I mean, it's a gimmick. It's an open gimmick now. But it's if you want to know what's going to be rare, pick the thing that other people are least likely to buy.
Well, let's cut into what you just said, man, because I'm curious as far as, because it used to be, a comic was made, it had a cover, and that was its cover. Right? And then it became, there was an alternate cover. And then it became, there's 10 alternate covers, and one of them is a foil, and one of them is a hologram, and one of them is a sketch cover, and
Right.
What
now,
do you think
our
that
30th anniversary issue, so we've got 30 different covers.
Yeah. So what do you think that did as far as to the overall industry to make it to where one book there's technically, 5 to 10 to 15 different iterations of, because of the fact it's just the cover? And do you think it changed a lot in the collecting community as well, as far as how that was handled?
Oh, I don't pay that much attention to the collector community, so I can't really say.
Fair enough.
But, like I say, Nick Barucci, for one, has made a lot of money doing that, so I guess it's a viable business model. Because You have to, because dealers have to order a certain amount of books in order to get the specialty books, and they have customers who want all the specialty covers because they collect, and so obviously there's some sort of market structure out there for it. So, I don't think it's helped the business particularly, but I don't know that it's hurt it. I mean, it's not like everybody is doing, 16 covers per book. So, I mean, most people can't afford it. Most people can barely afford one cover per book.
Yeah, with what comics cost now, geez, OP, can someone bring the 10-cent ones back, or at least where they were just like $1.50 a pop, or like
there's no money in that.
I mean, hey, I'm not arguing there. No, let's cut back to something as far as we discussed earlier. Then I just got to know, because the cost of paper has obviously affected comics a lot, and I know we've talked to creators previously to where they were talking about getting their own comics printed, and they're quoted like $15-$20 to print for just one issue, you know what I mean, as far as to get it pressed and everything. Like some of the costs I've heard for pressing has made my head hurt. All right, what do you think, like, how much do you think that affects creators, especially when it's somebody that's just trying to do like a Kickstarter?
Well, I mean, there are tons of crazy, this is where digital comics would come in real handy, free, it doesn't cost anything to print a digital comic, except, web servers and things. But, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than paper. And getting paper is difficult right now. So, just even, and that's the problem, is just even getting paper for the time being is difficult. But that'll ease up eventually. But, it's the problem with independent publishing. The reason I don't publish my own books is that there are an awful lot of booby traps in it. And I mean, I've considered doing, people I work with and I have considered doing Kickstarters, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Oh, you said booby traps. Yeah. I like boobies. I need to know what kind of traps you're talking about.
Well, like that, like the cost of money for paper. I mean, that's a booby trap. You walk in and you suddenly your budget has gone from here to here because you just have to get the paper out, or you have to get the right paper. Distribution costs go up. Just costs shift all the time and all kinds of things. So,
can I say? Well, and I don't remember what interview it was, what episode of the questionnaire, but I feel like one major thing we could do to drop the price of paper is if you just made hemp fully legal. You know what I mean? Because it's a very viable process for paper. I love that both, like, everybody's been like, oh, no, that's totally true. So I don't understand. It amazes me in part that the legalization of hemp would help the comic book community. It really kind of amuses me a little.
Hemp is mostly legal now, isn't it?
It is mostly legal in aspects, but when it comes to large distribution and scale production, it is not. And it has nothing to do with gaining money. It has absolutely everything to do with control of other areas outside of America.
Oh, sure.
It has actually nothing to do with hemp at all. It has everything to do with, like, well, I want to go into the rainforest and I want to control what's in the rainforest, which means I can control the local economy and the local dichotomy. And that's where it is. You know what I'm saying? So, unfortunately,
and not even that. It also has to do with the fact of the lumber industry, the cotton industry. I mean, there are several industries that don't want that.
Yeah, but those are worldwide industries. You got to understand. You know where most of the world's cotton comes from? China.
Yeah.
And they're not owned by the government. They're owned by small local farm dudes. And they grow watermelon right next to them. And I know that sounds so racist, but it's the truth. It's only racist in America, though. That's the best part. Around the world, it's great. We're the only ones in this country that are be like this. Oh, that sounds messed up. It's not messed up. It is the reality of the matter is watermelon and cotton grows everywhere else too. It's not just for no, none of that. But so it's not. It really has everything to do with controlling other people in other countries. It has nothing to do with the legalization of marijuana and hemp, and so people can smoke and make clothing and Because for goodness sakes, bro, I want you to think about it like this. Washington's one of the wettest states we got. All right.
Right.
Why don't we grow bamboo? It could grow anywhere. You can make plastic, construction wood, furniture, clothing, bedding, lingerie,
You know what?
anything.
I'll tell you why. Because it's all about programming. And I love the fact, Stephen, that you hate the programming on the radio. Can I say, the fact that was your, like, any song on the radio annoys the crap out of me. I love that, man. There's never been a time where you've been bumping the radio, though, and you've been like, hey, that one song right there. Like, everything else was crap, but that one song right there is kind of stuck out to me. It was like,
when I was a teenager, the radio was how we judged songs, because if it sounded, because you had these tiny little teeny boxes in your car, and we drive around in the car, and if a song came on the radio and it sounded good on the radio, it was a good song. You know, you'd hear stuff that's like, oh my God, this is like, I've never heard anything like this before. And but now it's all hyper programmed and just repetitive, and nothing particularly new or interesting ever pops up, and rarely, and you don't really need. I mean, I don't even listen to the radio when I'm driving, because I have everything on I have a tiny little MP3 player, and it's just plugged into my system, and I just put it on, and it it just randomly picks from thousands of songs, and and so I don't really. So I once in a while I put on the radio, and it's just me flipping from station to station to station to station through the whole thing. So because you can't stick with any song for long.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sitting down doing what is your most favorite and most dreaded part of your job, that being writing, is there a type of music you particularly like to listen to, or a go-to artist?
No, I generally only listen to instrumental music when I'm writing.
Makes sense.
Because you can't get the lyrics mixed up in your head, so But I listen to old. It's not old. I mean, I have a fixation on 20th century experimental classical stuff, like Iannis Xenakis and Karlheinz Stockhausen and things like that. So I play that when if I'm listening to music at all. Frequently, I don't listen to music at all while I'm writing, but anymore I used to, but has kind of worn off. But yeah, instrumental music and erratic instrumental music. So
I can understand that, man. And I would think it would help more in writing. That way, you're not sticking on the same thing. And can I say, though, I do love, not to cut back, I love that the favorite part of your job is the paychecks, and then prying them out of the publisher's hand. Do you find that to really be difficult at times?
It has been. Frequently not these days, but yeah, it depends on the publisher. I mean, there are publishers that you have to pester them to send you a check. And this is always the big problem with First Comics, is that, matter of fact, here's a story.
Yeah, that's why I wanted the story, but I didn't want you to incriminate yourself.
When I was living in Los Angeles, a pretty major comics writer moved out from New York to Los Angeles, and I didn't really know him that well in New York, but he calls me up and he says, hey, you want to have lunch? And I'm going, why is he calling me for lunch? Okay, I'll have lunch, fine. And we're pretty good friends now, but at the time it was like, that's weird. And so I go out to lunch with him, and he says, can I ask you something? I said, okay. I love it when people say, can I ask you something? Because it's like, what are you going to ask me? Tell me what you're going to ask me. Then I'll tell you whether you can ask me that or not. And he said, how hard do you have to work to get checks out of First Comics? I said, I don't have to work hard at all. And he said, really? I said, yeah, they send me checks. I get my checks when I'm supposed to. And he says, really? I said, well, because he says, because I always have lots of, I always have lots of trouble getting checks out of them. And I said, well, here's what I do when I send in my, because it was 30-day payment, and here's what I do when I send in my my voucher, I mark it down on my 30 days on my calendar, and when that 30 days are up, I call up Kathy, who was the comptroller at First Comics. I say, hey, Kathy, do you owe me a check this week? And she goes, oh, okay, and then she sends it out. And so, you know, I've been, and even at that, I often had to fight to get checks out of First, but because First always had cash flow problems. It's when companies have cash flow problems that you have the biggest problem. And
that makes sense.
He was very offended at the idea that he had to talk to anyone besides his editor. And I said, well, yes, you're right to be offended by that. But can I ask you something? Do you want to get paid or don't you? And you know, I mean, that was always the great benefit of working for Marvel or DC is you didn't have to worry about getting paid. It's usually like within 2 weeks you'd have your check. You know, so if there's any great benefit to working for Marvel or DC, that's it. You don't have to worry about the check coming. Other companies, it varies. I mean, you know, but you have to go in with an idea that you might have to like pester them for your check.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Man, can I just say, this has been a phenomenal interview, Steven. I appreciate you greatly coming by.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
I just want to add, man, I'm going to have to check out Two Guns. I've not seen that flick. Also, I'm going to have to bug Rob about ordering me that comic book. Shout out to Comic Book University. I love that one of the series you liked beyond that, though, was The Boys. Because Garth Ennis is one of those writers to me. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Like I said, when I got... Yeah.
I always like our stuff, but the TV series is better than the comic was. The TV series is just great in pretty much. I mean, past the first couple episodes, I was initially kind of appalled by the first couple episodes and thought, man, this is not, you know, going to go anywhere. And then suddenly, like on the third episode, it's like, oh my God, it's going somewhere. And then it just boom. And then the third season, the latest season with Soldier Boy and all that, it's like, oh my God, things just keep happening on it. And you're going, these are like the most horrible people in you know, but they're not all horrible, so it gives you a little anchor. But you know, I mean, and the characterizations are just so. I mean, you know, Anthony Starr playing Homelander is just fantastic. You know, Carl Urban's always been one of my favorites. So Carl Urban.
I love Carl Urban. Yeah.
Billy Butcher is just. I mean, they are all so perfect in their parts. You know, and it's really well written and really tightly written because you know you're going through. You get to like episode 6 of both the second and third series, and you think, okay, well, this has got to be a 10-part, 12-part series, and then suddenly it's over in episode 8. There's just like all this stuff suddenly happens, and it's like, and there's no way you can contemplate them. You can possibly imagine they could wrap everything up in that amount of time, and suddenly it's all wrapped up, and it's like, you know, it's just very satisfying. It's a very satisfying series. So.
That's what I gotta say too, though. On the next question, man, you gave the answer that I've been waiting for, and the fact that it took 10 episodes for someone to say Green Lantern, man, Green Lantern, like with Green Lantern, it's literally one of the worst comic book films around. No offense to anyone that enjoyed it. I'm sorry if you did. That's fine. Whatever. But are you serious?
Here's the thing. Ooh. I actually really like the Green Lantern movie, but it's a terrible movie. There are things about it that I really love. I mean, I think visually it's fantastic. It's spectacular. That scene of Oa at the end, one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen on film. Structurally, it's a nightmare. I mean,
I think they picked a great actor.
There's a very simple progression to this. He gets his power. You know, you have whatever happens in space. That's fine. The preamble, that's fine. He gets the ring. He figures out how to use the ring. He has an adventure on Earth. He goes into near space. He has a little adventure there. And then at the end of it, he goes to Oa. You know, I mean, you can, it's you don't have to jump it back and forth and have everything happening. I mean, basically the big problem with that film is that they wanted everything to happen at once, and you don't have to have everything happen at once. You build it, and you layer things in, and you take it, you expand it slowly. But no, he gets the ring. He goes to Oa. He comes back to Earth. He goes to Oa. He's out in space. He goes to Oa. He comes back to Earth. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. And it's like it's just structurally a complete mess. And,
can I say though? Oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
And I don't have, it's not like I dislike the actors. I think the actors did fine in it.
I think Ryan Reynolds was a great choice for Hal Jordan, But to pick on the next part of your answer, any Spider-Man film?
I don't like any of the Spider-Man. Well, I don't mind the latest one because it was just, clearly the mood had shifted in it. But the other ones, I don't like any. I don't like any of the Sam Raimi films. I think they're just tedious. I don't like the actors playing them in general. I mean, I like Andrew Garfield. I always have to think between Andrew Garfield and Andrew Lincoln. Andrew Garfield, I mean, I like Andrew Garfield in general. I didn't think the characterization of Spider-Man worked at all. I mean,
I think that was more the script than it was.
But I mean, regardless of what it was, I didn't think the characterization worked in that. I didn't think the characterization worked in the Tobey Maguire one. I mean, Tobey Maguire just acted too dopey through the whole thing.
I think, can I say, Steven, I think this has been a phenomenal interview. And I swear I've come to the conclusion we could carry it on for another hour and a half.
We could.
I sincerely have. And Steven, it has been a pleasure. I want everybody to check out every link that I put in the description below. There's going to be all kinds of dopeness. You can go find all kinds of Steven's work, from what he's doing by himself independently to everything else he's done. I've got a feeling this is going to be one of the YouTubes that's got one of the longer descriptions as far as the links is concerned with you, Steven, which is phenomenal, man. I mean, I appreciate everything you've done. I appreciate you coming on the questionnaire. Before
we really do.
We wrap this up, Hardaway, you got one more question?
Man, you always put me on the spot like that.
What?
You
aren't you used to it by now?
Bro, I'll be sitting here like listening, just like, yeah, I asked questions, did my thing, enjoying the time. He's got stories, and then you're like, Hardaway, ask a question. I got a question. So your hair is your personal superpower. What say you?
My hair turned completely white before I was 20. By the time I was 22.
What? That is awesome. Yeah, no,
it's just it's not. I had nothing to do with it. It's just a genetic thing.
Yeah.
It's always been. It's pretty much been like this since I was 22. So that's years and years of that. And so it's always been a great little conversation starter, and
Wow.
In New York, I used to have I at least twice had women ask me what I did to my hair. Just stop me on the street to inquire what I did with my hair, and I'd say I wash it. That's it. That's it. And I dry it, and you don't like frost or anything. No, this is what it is, and they all go.
I take a comb and I do like this, and it does this.
Little conditioner. Actually, in a post office, about a year ago, I had to mail something, and there was a guy standing behind me, and he said, "You mind if I ask you a question?" I love it when people say, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" It's like it's a great way to introduce. But
can I say? Yeah, that's a question in and of itself.
Well, I know. I got over saying I got over saying you just did. I just go with it now. But he said, "Well, I'm like, I just turned like 31, and I noticed my hair is starting to get gray, and I was just wondering how you dealt with it when, and because that, I was, he was obviously assuming I was older than 31 correctly, but, still it's kind of amusing. And I said, well, I never had that. I said, I can't really answer that because my hair turned white when I was 22, so I never had that problem. and he was like baffled by that. I was like, whoa.
That's phenomenal, man. Look, I got one more question,
Sure.
Steven, and then I got to wrap this up, or I'm going to give myself way too much to edit, even though it's been phenomenal.
Well, we can always do a
let's
second one if you want.
Oh, Steven, well, it will be a pleasure to bring you back, man. I've got so much planned. I hope you are someone that comes back to the questionnaire quite a few times when it's all said and done, man, because we're trying to run, because the quest is comics. But what I want to know is if you were in a comic and you could pick a power, man, for you to have personally, like a superpower, what would you want? Just one.
Yeah, I used to have an answer for this. I can't remember what the answer was. I
hope this one's fresh.
Telepathy. Probably telepathy.
Can I say real quick, nobody said anything to that effect, but doesn't it worry you having telepathy walking around in humanity that you would find people that you were like, oh, dude, you're terrible, and you just have to shut them down?
I do that all the time anyway.
Well, but I mean, fair enough. Whatever. Look, it's true. Just try and hang out with dope humans. That's all I said. We got to hang out with one for a while.
I don't go out much, so So.
Well, I'm glad you came over here to join our quest, man, to the tribute to episode 1. This has been episode 10 of the question. Before we go, Steve, can I get you to be like, yeah, this is Stephen Grant. Any information you want about yourself, and be like, check out the questionnaire just say check out the questionnaire. I mean, it is every Wednesday at noon, but you ain't got to add all that. I don't care. You can't. Your discretion.
Okay. I look for me on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll get all the information. I am at Yes, That's Stephen Grant on both of them. So
I don't think I. Oh, but could you say, this is Stephen Grant. Make sure you check out the questionnaire.
Oh,
Wednesday.
Like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't understand.
Sorry, it's all good, man.
When is it? Wednesdays?
Wednesdays at noon.
Okay. This is Stephen Grant, and you damn well better check out, what's your name again?
The questionnaire.
Every Wednesday at noon. And don't be late.
Technically, I'm the unknown factor, though, and he's Jay D-Day Hardaway. But you know what? The questionnaire would probably have just been just as perfect a name for my ass as the unknown factor.
The questionnaire up there. You want me to redo it? I can redo it.
Yeah, could you run it one more time, Steven? I love you. I'm a pain in the ass.
What are the names again? Run them by me real quick.
Hey, you ain't got to include ours, bro.
Yeah, our name doesn't matter. It's just check out the questionnaire.
Okay. Okay, hi. This is Stephen Grant, and you better check out the questionnaire every Wednesday at noon, and don't be late.
Oh, Stephen, it has been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
I look forward to bringing you back in the future. We will definitely have to plan that on so many different ways. I got a movie I got to go check out right now. Make sure you check out Stephen Grant. If you're watching this episode, there are links you can click for all kind of information. I am the Unknown Factor.
And I'm Jay D-Day Hardaway.
And I'm
This has been episode... Oh, shit. I fucked it up. Let's do it again. I don't give a fuck, right? This is the one where we decide to stop editing and just become a podcast where we say whatever the hell we want to. And you know what? That's Stephen Grant's fault. Stephen, thank you much for it, right? So again, I am the Unknown Factor.
And I'm Jay D-Day Hardaway. And this is...
And I'm Stephen Grant.
And this is episode 10 of the questionnaire. Have a good night, y'all.
Bye.
It's always that pause that gets me. I feel I should fill in.